My daughter-in-law walked into my kitchen on a Tuesday morning. She placed her coffee mug on the counter without asking and told me her parents would be coming on Friday. I smiled, nodded, and waited until she left the room before I picked up my phone. That call changed everything, but I am moving too fast. You need to understand what this house means before you can understand what happened inside it. I built this place with my own hands. Not in a symbolic way. I mean, I poured the foundation myself, built every wall frame, ran all the wiring, and laid the wooden floors in the hallway where my late wife Margaret used to slide in her socks every Christmas morning. I started building in 1987 and moved my family in on a Saturday in October when the oak trees outside were glowing orange and my oldest son was 6 years old and believed the whole house was a castle. It took me 4 years to finish it properly. 4 years of evenings after work, weekends, holidays. Every room in this house holds a memory I placed there on purpose. Margaret passed away 11 years ago. Breast cancer. It was found too late and she was gone too quickly. After that, the house became something different. It became the place where grief lived next to everything else. Her garden in the back still grows every spring because I take care of it. Her reading chair is still by the front window because I put it there and no one ever asked me to move it. This house is mine in every possible way. A house can belong fully to a person. I have 2 children. Derek is 41. He is mostly a good man. He works in commercial real estate, earns decent money, and married Vanessa 8 years ago in a vineyard ceremony 2 hours north of here. My daughter Claire is 38. She lives in Portland with her wife and twin boys and calls me every Sunday without missing a single week. Vanessa is a complicated woman. I say that kindly. She is organized, driven, and used to getting what she decides she wants. She has a way of speaking that turns requests into final decisions, like she already had the discussion in her head and already won it before anyone else spoke. When she first married Derek, I thought it was just her personality. I even liked her energy. I thought she would be good for him because Derek has always needed someone to push him forward a bit. But over time, I started seeing a pattern. Family dinners where decisions were already made before we sat down. Holidays where plans appeared fully arranged without anyone asking the rest of us. Small things, mostly. And I let them pass because Margaret used to say peace in a family costs something, and usually it is worth paying. So I paid it. I stayed quiet more than I should have. Vanessa's parents are Gerald and Phyllis Horn. Gerald is a retired civil engineer from near Columbus. Phyllis was a 4th grade teacher for 30 years. They are not bad people. Gerald tells the same 3 fishing stories again and again and laughs at them like they are new each time. Phyllis brings a Jell-O salad to every gathering that nobody eats, but nobody tells her to stop bringing it either. I have known them for 8 years and always stayed polite. The trouble started at Easter. We were all at my house for Easter dinner, like we always did since before Derek and Vanessa got married. I cooked the ham myself, made Margaret's recipe for twice-baked potatoes, and set the table in the dining room with the good china. Gerald and Phyllis drove in from Columbus. Claire flew in from Portland with her family. The house was full, loud, and warm, the way Easter at my home is supposed to be. After dinner, while the kids were outside and Claire was helping me with dishes, Vanessa asked Derek to go with her into the living room. I could hear their voices, but not the words. Claire looked at me, and I looked at her, and we said nothing. When Vanessa came back into the kitchen, she had that expression, the one I had learned to recognize, the one that meant she had already finished the conversation in her own mind. She said, "Walter, we have been thinking." I handed Claire a plate to dry and waited. She said Gerald and Phyllis were getting older. She said their house in Columbus was becoming too hard for them to manage. She said Derek had been worried about them for months, which surprised me because Derek had never once mentioned it. Then she said she had been looking at options, and the most sensible one, financially and for the family, was that Gerald and Phyllis should move in here. I stopped what I was doing. I said, "Move in here?" She said, "Yes." She said the house was big enough, that the guest suite downstairs was perfect, and that it would save them the cost of assisted living or renting something small. She said it would bring peace of mind for everyone. I said, "This is my house." Vanessa smiled, but not warmly. She said she knew that, of course, and that we would all figure it out together, but she and Derek felt it was the right decision, and they hoped I would see it that way too. Claire slowly put down the dish towel. She said, "Vanessa." Vanessa said, "Claire, I know this feels sudden." Claire said, "This is Dad's house." Vanessa said she understood that. Claire said, "You are asking our father to share his home with your parents, people he barely knows." Vanessa replied that she would not call it barely knowing them. I placed my hand on Claire's arm because I could feel where this was going, and it was not going anywhere good. I said I needed time to think. I said I would give them an answer later. Vanessa said, "Of course, take your time." But she said it like people say it when they already believe there is no time left to take. That night, after everyone left, I sat in Margaret's chair by the front window for a long time. I looked at the oak tree she helped me plant. I thought about the 4 years I spent building this house, the 34 years I lived in it with her, and the 11 years I had lived in it alone, taking care of it alone, keeping it the way we built it together. I thought about everyone who had sat at my kitchen table over the years, more people than most would guess. After Margaret and I moved in, the neighborhood was young, lots of families, lots of children. There was a boy named Marcus 2 houses down, whose father left when he was 8, and whose mother worked 2 or 3 jobs. Marcus used to come by often, and slowly the house became familiar to him. Over the years, people came and went. Friends, neighbors, workers, old crew members, children who grew up and still came back as adults. My house was never just walls, it became a place people returned to. Now I will tell you what happened the next morning. Claire arrived at 7:15. She had flown in overnight from Portland and walked in through the front door with her bag, her jaw tight, and hugged me for a long time without speaking. Then she made coffee and sat across from me at the table, and we talked quietly until 8 o'clock. Marcus arrived at 8:30 like he always does. He walked in like he still lived here. He made a second pot of coffee and stood by the kitchen window looking out at the backyard. He said, "Garden looks good, Mr. Walt." I said, "Margaret's peonies came back strong this year." He nodded, like that explained everything. By 9 o'clock, more people started arriving. Tommy came with Devon, who looked exhausted from driving all night. Sujin arrived still in work clothes, apologizing, and I told her there was nothing to apologize for. Others followed, friends, old workers, neighbors, people who had been part of this house in different ways across decades. By 9:45, my house was full again. Kitchen, living room, porch, people standing, talking, remembering. Some I had known for 40 years, some for less, but all connected to this place in some way. A moving truck turned onto my street just before 10 o'clock. Behind it was Derek's car. Behind that was Gerald and Phyllis's sedan. They all pulled into my driveway. Vanessa stepped out first, still on her phone. She looked up at the house and stopped. The porch had people standing on it. More were inside. The yard was full of voices. She froze. Derek got out next. I watched his face change as he took it all in. I walked onto the porch. Vanessa said, "Walter, what is this?" I said, "These are my family." She looked around and said, "I don't understand." I said, "I know you don't. Come inside, and I will explain." Gerald and Phyllis stood behind them, confused and unsure. I invited all of them in. We stood in the entryway for a moment, the spring air coming through the open door, the garden visible outside, green beginning to return, life starting again in small ways. And Vanessa finally saw that this house was never just a building. Store bienek to fazol bahis ku kar rahi ho. After some time, I put my arm gently around my son's shoulders, and he leaned into me in a way he had not done for many years. It was the same way he used to when he was little, before the world became complicated and heavy. We just stood there in the yard of the house I had built with my own hands until Helen came to the back door and called out that if nobody came inside in the next minute, she would finish the casserole all by herself. That made everyone laugh. Even Vanessa laughed. That evening, after everyone had left, after Gerald and Phyllis had driven back toward a hotel I had suggested downtown, and Derek and Vanessa had gone in their car with more silence between them than when they arrived, and after Claire had fallen asleep on the couch with the television still on and her shoes off, I sat down in Margaret's chair. The house was quiet, in that special way it becomes after being full of people. It was a good kind of quiet. Not empty, but holding the memory of voices and laughter that had just been there. I sat there thinking about what Derek had asked me in the garden. What was missing? He asked it as if it was only about Vanessa, but I knew it was also about him. What do you do when someone you love stops standing up to you? When they let you go in a direction that is not right, because stopping you feels harder than agreeing with you? Derek had sat through every talk where this plan with Vanessa was made. He had told himself it would all work out in the end. He had handed me the phone and asked me to accept something his wife had already decided. He called it family thinking, but it was really comfort. It was easier to agree than to fight it. Margaret used to stand up to me, not in anger, not all the time. But when it mattered, she would sit right across from me at this same kitchen table and say, "Walt, I need you to listen to me." And then she would say what needed to be said. Sometimes I agreed right away. Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I needed time to think. Once or twice, I never fully agreed at all. But she always said it anyway. That is how we stayed honest for 36 years. That is how love worked in this house. I thought about Devon, 17 years old, full of anger and pushing in the wrong direction, slowly learning that the wall does not care about feelings. You can dislike the job, hate the early mornings, be angry at the person who gave you the tools, but the wall still tells the truth. Straight or crooked, right or wrong, the truth does not change. You can still build something strong if you accept that. I looked out through the front window at the oak trees. Margaret and I had planted them when the house was new. Back when Derek was small, and none of the events of this week had ever happened. Now they were about 50 feet tall, their leaves just beginning to return. That light soft green that only comes in April. That color that says life is still continuing quietly. I reached over and turned off the lamp. The room went dark except for the street light shining through the moving leaves outside. The house settled into the night the way it always does. The way it has for 34 years, like it knows how to rest. On Saturday morning, the moving truck came back. Not for Gerald and Phyllis this time. Vanessa had sent it to remove furniture she had already placed in the guest suite without telling me. 3 pieces that had appeared there while I was away earlier in the week. I had not said anything then. I said something now. I met the driver at the door with a list I had written carefully, item by item, and told him exactly where everything should go. He looked at the paper, then at me, and said, "She said you'd have a list." I replied, "I've been making lists my whole life." He nodded and said, "Good for you, man." He sounded like he meant it. By noon, the guest room was empty again. I put everything back the way it belonged. The quilt Margaret had made, always resting on the corner chair, the small framed print on the wall that Devon had once found at a market and given me, the reading lamp I had repaired myself back in 1998. I smoothed the quilt, stood in the doorway for a moment, and just looked at the room. Then I went downstairs, made myself lunch, and ate it at my own kitchen table with the windows open. The spring air came in softly, and Margaret's garden was visible from where I sat. Later in the afternoon, Claire woke up and came downstairs. She looked at me and asked, "How are you?" "I'm good," I said. She paused. "Really?" "Really." She studied me for a moment, the way she sometimes did, with that look she got from her mother, the one that could tell if you were telling the truth or just the easier version. "Okay," she said at last. "I'm going to call you every Sunday like always, but I'm also going to call you Thursday nights for a while." "That's not necessary," I said. "I know," she answered. "I want to." Then she added, "And if Derek and Vanessa do anything?" "Derek will be fine," I said. "Vanessa will come around." "They just needed someone to stand up to them," I added. "You did stand up," Claire said. "I did." "Mom would have stood up faster," she said. That made me laugh. She was right. Margaret would have stopped the moving truck before it even reached the street. "Your mother had a gift for getting things done," I said. "She had a gift for everything," Claire replied. We stood there in the kitchen for a while without speaking. We did that sometimes. Just standing in the house where we all grew up, letting it stay what it was, a place built by one person and turned into a home by another, becoming something more than either alone. 3 weeks later, Gerald called me. He said he and Phyllis had found an apartment about 40 minutes from Derek and Vanessa's place. It had a small patio, and Phyllis was already excited about growing plants in containers. The building had a shared workshop in the basement with proper tools, and he was looking forward to it. He said, "I owe you for not making this worse than it had to be." I told him he didn't owe me anything. He added that Vanessa got her strong way of pushing things from Phyllis. "Neither of them was raised to be unkind," he said. "They were raised to solve problems strongly. That's usually a good thing." "She's embarrassed," he added quietly. "She won't say it, but she is." "I know," I said. "Derek is a good man," he said. "He is," I agreed. He had a moment of weakness. "He knows it now." Gerald said, "I think the next 8 years will look very different from the last 8. "That's usually what happens when the truth comes into a room," I said. He laughed softly. "Take care of those oak trees, Walter." "I will," I said. After the call ended, I stood at the window again and looked at them. April was almost finished. The leaves were no longer that soft, early green, but a deeper, steady green, the kind that says the tree has chosen to stay. I remembered something Devon once said after calling to check on me that Friday. He said, "You always told me the best thing you can put into a structure is truth. If the frame is right, everything else can be built on top of it." He said he had thought about that for years, not just about buildings. I thought about it too. The foundation of this family had been tested, and it had held. Not perfectly, not without damage. There were cracks that would need repair, and that would take time. But the structure was still solid. The frame was still true. I went into the kitchen, made coffee, and called Marcus to ask if he wanted to come for dinner. He said yes before I even finished the question. He also said he would bring his daughter, because she had been asking about my workshop in the garage. She was 11 and apparently very interested in woodworking. I told him I would have a project ready for her. He laughed and said, "Mr. Walt, you've been saying that to kids in this neighborhood for 40 years. "I know," I said. "And it always works out," he added. "I know that," I said.